Welcome to episode 2 of the Flies on the Ball podcast. Today we're going to be starting by talking about the Premier League. So, does anyone have any comments on the Arsenal fixtures?
It was marred by a lot of controversy surrounding referee decisions. That was the key thing about it.
Yeah, there were like 2 or 3. It's like with every game when VAR is viewed as the arbiter of disaster or doom. They focus on 2 specific instances, 1 for, 1 against, where kind of ruined the game for a particular team. So I think there was one potential penalty for Arsenal. I think it was Odegaard may have been fouled.
I think Edison came out.
Yeah, Edison came out, and he made contact with Odegaard before making contact with the ball, I believe, but no penalty was awarded. And then later on, of course, was it Xhaka? Tugged Bernardo Silva. Well, he tugged the shirt. He also knocked him, and of course Bernardo exaggerated, which exacerbates the situation. He kind of flip-flopped like a fish onto the floor.
Some were saying that Xhaka's shirt pull was to save Bernardo from hitting the ground, sort of thing.
Xhaka is such a courteous man.
There were a lot of slow-mo replays of the contact between Edison and Martin Odegaard. And I'll admit, at first glance, I did think it was a penalty. Then the second time I watched it, I thought, oh, there's he gets to the ball. Oh, that means it's no penalty. But then watching it again, I realised that, it probably was a penalty, actually, because I'm not sure he did get to the ball. But then I watch it again, and then I think, oh, hang on, you got Odegaard stepping on his... It was too close.
It was very close, but the problem is the referee wasn't sent to the monitor. It wasn't a consistent call by VAR. So VAR for the Edison one, they made the decision, there's no clear and obvious error here, we don't need to send this to the referee. Whereas with the Xhaka one, they said, there is a clear and obvious error here, you need to do it. And everyone knows, once it's sent to the monitor, it will almost always be a penalty. And by not sending the referee to the first one, they're creating an inconsistency. And I mean, the problem is clear and obvious in that it is clear and obvious. So a foul in the penalty area is either a foul or not a foul. It's not. It's a binary. There's no, is it clear and obvious? So we can watch that as much as we want. The referee should always be sent to the monitor in a situation like that, where VAR should not decide what's clear and obvious. The referee should go and say, that looks like a foul, or that does not look like a foul. By being sent to the monitor, the referee then has a chance to correct his own mistake, or to say, no, I was right. By not sending him to the monitor.
Yeah, it takes it out of his hands, because the referee's meant to have full agency, really. Also, that reminds me, what do you think about the notion that slowing something down makes it worse? Monitor slowing down challenge.
It makes it look worse.
It makes it look worse, and it exaggerates something that in real time may not have been that much, because a slight touch at that speed and that level of the game may make a difference. But if you go and look at on the monitor where they slow it down again and again and again, you start to lose a perspective, maybe.
The best one is like handballs. So like if it just makes even slight contact on what's judged to be somebody's arm or something. I don't know what the definition is of an arm nowadays, but whatever it is nowadays, invariably, it will be
armpit.
Like, they'll slow, or oh yes, of course.
Is it not the sleeve at this point?
It's supposed to be the sleeve here, yeah.
But like when it's slowed down massively, you can see that contact is made, but like trying to make those quick decisions in such a short space of time, it's and then we get into this whole debate of like what's a natural and unnatural arm position. It just gets ridiculous. It really does. And it just sort of takes the fun out of the game.
And when you slow it down, it sort of makes it look like it's been a more calculated decision on the part of the people you're slowing down.
Well, yeah. So they're not necessarily going to intend to do it, but at the same time, if it's hitting their hand in the penalty area, and that is, if it's giving you a benefit, or rather, it's taking a benefit away from the attacker because it's hit your hand, and your hand was in an unnatural position, whether it was your intention or not, you're potentially stopping them scoring a goal, right?
Yeah.
That's why it should be a penalty, and that's why VAR should be there to say this is a penalty, or should send the referee to the screen to let the referee make the decision. And I think we need to see more of the referees being sent to the screen for
definitely.
fouls, instead of VAR making these decisions behind the scenes with seemingly no oversight. And we should move away from clear and obvious for fouls, because fouls are a binary; they're either a foul or not. And if we want to speed the game up, in another area we can look at is with offsides. Instead of spending ages drawing fine lines, if you can't make that a clear and obvious thing, like, oh, they are clearly offside, it's offside, the decision on field was wrong. Oh, they're onside, cool, the goal stands. And give benefit to the attack, because football should be an attacking sport, right? That's where the entertainment is, for the attacking. If you're spending ages deciding what's offside, you're first of all taking time away from the game. You're not giving the benefit to the attacker, and it's ruining the attacking entertainment of the sport. So you should give benefit to the attacker and do clear and obvious on offsides, while taking a more strict view on fouls. That's my opinion.
I suppose that what you could argue with that, though, is that the whole clear and obvious thing is that ultimately that is down to subjective judgment, and there is inevitably going to be a level of human error in that case. And I imagine the whole point of bringing in VAR was obviously to eliminate human error. So when it comes to making decisions on a clear and obvious basis, does that not sort of defeat the point of VAR?
Yeah. I think it does, because you're not eliminating the error. You're just bringing it in at a different point. Instead of bringing it in while the game's being played, you're bringing it in 2 minutes later, looking at it 10 times slower.
No.
Oh, definitely. And Sam, your comments on offside reminds me of another issue we have with current rulings, because we've had recent changes to the rules to try and help the officials manage games better, basically, officiate games better, more effectively. And then our current offside rule allows the linesman to delay his decision even by mere seconds, but it's so dangerous, as pundits have said practically every time it's criticised. A few seconds can be long enough for a player, for example Van Dijk last year against Everton, to sustain a severe injury.
Absolutely. I think the offside flag should be raised so long as the linesman believes they're right. Like, they might still get it wrong sometimes. That's a part of the game. It's been a part of the game forever. Like, if they get it wrong when they really think they're right, then fine. If they don't know, then let the game continue playing.
Yeah.
Because at that point, it's clearly close enough that it could be either. Let VAR make that decision once the goal's gone in. Or if there is no goal, then, whatever.
Yeah.
But that flag should be brought up whenever the linesmen believe that they are right in that it is offside. And if it's occasionally wrong, it's occasionally wrong. People will complain and say it's biased refereeing, but that's going to happen no matter what happens.
There's always going to be complaints.
It's all for entertainment purposes in the end, right? Because part of the appeal of, at least for me, part of the appeal of football is how fast paced it is, and how you do get this element of non-stop action. Like when I don't mean to rag on other sports particularly, but when I've tried watching sports such as like NFL or baseball and things like that, they can be interesting for sure, but one problem with them is that they can be so split up. They can be so
definitely
slow paced and just like cutting to advert breaks and things like that. Whereas with football, like one thing that's quite unique about it is that it is almost just non-stop for about 45 minutes and then for another 45 minutes. So when you get stuff like VAR decisions breaking up the game, it does sort of kill that a little bit.
Yeah, you get frustrated because you're enjoying the pace and you're getting used to it and you're getting excited. And the atmosphere is improving as the game goes on, ideally, depending on, of course, the situation in the match. But then, there's a break for, it can feel like ages, but it could just be 30 seconds and you go, oh. It's like you have an adrenaline, it's like a hit of an adrenaline, maybe, for like 20, 30 minutes, and then there's a stop, and then you get a really big down, and you have to go again. And it's not even a guaranteed correct decision. So I understand why it's unpopular.
Exactly. It's like we all like watching Man City, Liverpool, Leeds because they're so Arsenal, Crystal Palace this season. They're all like attacking, going forward. They're playing the game. No one really wants to sit there and watch Burnley versus Wolves. No, they don't play football.
I mean, Wolves do have a decent. Well, they're racking up the clean sheets at the moment, and they are doing really well. But they are boring to watch.
A lack of goal scoring exploits so far. Yeah, 14 goals in something like 28 games. No, 28 games? Sorry, wrong. It's like 14 goals. It's less than 28 games. We're not that far into the season just yet.
I'm just going to say, I don't think Man U would say that Wolves-Burnley would be the most boring fixture to watch goals-wise, maybe. But
I mean, I'd be interested to see what Man U fans think on this, because for the last couple of seasons under Solskjaer, United played primarily counter-attacking football. It utilised the best that they had, and it worked really well. They, I think, beat City 3 times in 2019-20. It was an effective system, and all of a sudden they changed it this year to something no one can really identify. And we've gone over reasons why Man U have struggled before, but now under Rangnick they're trying to solidify their defence first, and then move up the pitch that way. But yeah, again, they don't really have any exciting football on the cards yet. But yeah, it's again one reason why the Premier League does so well is because of the kind of football that is being played, and more teams. You've got Brighton this year, you've got Palace are playing more expansive, open, attacking football.
I mean, even when they're not, to be honest, I still think that football is infinitely more interesting. But because of that constant, action basically throughout 90 minutes, that's why. I mean, that's why I imagine most of us watch football. We continue to be interested in football. I mean, we're talking about football, and so when you get stuff like VAR breaking up the game, it just kills a little bit of that enjoyment. And ultimately, if they're more conscious about ensuring that the game remains entertaining, then unfortunately, VAR is not really helping with that.
Oh, certainly.
Sam specifically brings up injury. Like, not fake injuries, but maybe overplaying injuries as an example of stopping the game.
Indeed.
In a way, in a way that breaks up the entertainment. And I wonder if that draws as much outrage, at least not just from Sam, but compared to VAR breaking up the play. I wonder if there's as much ire directed at the players who,
Don't worry, there is from me at least.
I wouldn't be surprised if VAR has kind of diluted that attention, because prior to VAR, we were always annoyed directly at any player who simulated a foul, who just bought a dive. For example, Ashley Young, known for being a serial diver, one of the few points where everyone was just, you could direct your eye towards something very clear and specific. But now VAR's kind of diluted that anger, because you're still annoyed at the diving, but you're kind of used to it because players have dived for years now. But now you've got something new to be angry at.
This time it's not a person; it's a many-headed beast.
It's a concept. Isn't it?
It's worse because it's the organisation. Everyone loves to hate on authority, right?
Yeah.
And that's what VAR is, more so than divers.
That said, the many-headed beast has a new head this week, which is of course Mr. Trezeguet.
Oh yes, I didn't see that dive. I was watching another match.
It is worth watching because it's rather indicative of the current state of football, where something like that can happen. And I don't know if he was actually booked for it or anything. It was caught on VAR. They reviewed it under VAR. But to be honest with you, even if he was booked for it, I actually think he should have been sent off for it because it was that bad.
It's endemic within the game as a whole, to be honest. But yeah,
it is, and some teams are worse than others. And I think it's a coaching thing.
I don't think it's necessarily a coaching thing anymore. I think it's so systemic. Players just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's some teams that do it
coaches
significantly more than others. And if teams are doing it en masse, whereas other teams aren't, then there's got to be an element of, at the very least, the coaches aren't saying stop diving and
but
play football.
It's also the lack of consequence. At this point, it is just an aspect of the game. It is just something you do to break up play. It is something you do if you can win penalties, win fouls, win free kicks, stuff like that. In fact, I think coaches would actually be... I wouldn't be surprised if there are coaches now that would be annoyed if you didn't do that, or if you're a bit too honourable, because it's an aspect of the game that isn't punished, and so players feel like that's something that we can do tactically. It's something we can do tactically, and we'll suffer no consequence for it. And so it just becomes an inherent part of the game. Tony
Pulis at Stoke comes to mind. He would deliberately tell his players to go down by a few minutes.
And to be honest with you, like I will be honest, if I was a football manager right now, I would probably be doing the same, because if it's a part of the game that isn't punished, then you're looking for the path of least resistance. You're looking for the way to win a game. In the words of Neil Warnock, you have to die to get 3 points. But yeah, like you're looking for every way possible to win the game. You're looking for the best strategy, to win the game. And if it comes to diving, if it comes to cheating, then you might as well go for it.
Yeah, well, you're right, because you're rewarded for it, and you're not punished
right,
for.
But, yeah.
No, obviously not.
Gamesmanship.
I think
Yeah.
we can all agree it's a part of the sport, and we can probably also all agree that it's. I think we can all agree it's annoying, and the problem is that there is no punishment, no real punishment for diving. Occasionally, and it is very occasionally, someone will get booked, and that's not good enough. VAR doesn't just have to check the controversial things and say, okay, that's a red card, that's the thing. VAR could be used in the background silently to look at certain dives, and like, you don't have to stop the game for it, right? The referee sees it, he goes, oh, that's a free kick, gives a free kick. After the game, the VAR could say, right, this person dived there, that's simulation, that's a retrospective yellow card.
Yeah.
Because that does matter, because you accumulate yellow cards and you pick up suspensions that way.
Yeah.
So it does matter. You don't have to send them off or give them a suspension post-game, but if you give them a yellow card after the fact, then it does still count towards their tally, and it does still eventually lead to a suspension.
No, because right now our view of the game is at an Orwellian level. Pretty much, it's at a level where we see all aspects of the game. Nothing goes unnoticed, and so it's not like it's a case of we didn't see it. You absolutely did see it. If you didn't see it, well, then you're incompetent.
Exactly.
It's just
like a referee can miss something, VAR can't.
Yeah.
Like it is there. The only time VAR is going to miss something is when the cameras are blocked. And okay, fair enough. One in a 1,000 times that might happen, and someone gets away with something. Who cares? People are getting away with things every time now. So if we can change it from 999 times out of 1,000 to one time out of 1,000 where it gets missed, that seems better. And it doesn't have to slow the game down, because it can be done in the background and just done retrospectively across the players, and they can be told this punishment is because of this, and eventually it will filter it out of the game.
Well, conversely, you could argue, and I'm kind of being devil's advocate here, that trying to break up play and penalise every single dive, given it's so prevalent, wouldn't that? Are you talking about only post-match penalties? So VAR wouldn't interfere during a match unless it was an important moment and tell the ref, look at the screen, this player's dived. Or because you're trying to incorporate nuance into something that has to be fairly structured, fairly simple, because it has to be replicated multiple times over every day, basically.
I'd say go with the on-field referee's decision. So if the referee gives a free kick for a dive, then they've given that free kick for the dive. VAR shouldn't spend ages looking at that, holding the game up. But while that free kick's being taken, VAR can note that down as, that looked like a dive, we'll look into that later. And then after the match can look into that and say, that was a dive, give them a booking for simulation. And you can say a player can only get one booking in a game for simulation. So let's say Trezeguet goes down 4 times in the game, clear dives, and then another 3 times he was actually fouled. You can then just give 1 yellow card for simulation across the game.
I checked, by the way, he wasn't booked, which is ridiculous. But
yeah, post-mortem bookings would probably help develop some form of accountability, because yes, at the moment there is no reason why they shouldn't dive. It gives a tactical edge.
Yeah.
They aren't punished. They don't really care what they look like. Everyone does it.
which I really wonder about, honestly, because like the case of Juro Immobile during the Euros. So like, fantastic striker, won the Golden Boot the other season, European Golden Shoe, whatever it's called. But I imagine that's not the thing he will be remembered for in his career. What he will be remembered for is that pathetic dive in whatever it was. Is it the semi-finals, the final? That instance where Italy scored, and then he just picks himself up after having appeared injured. I just don't understand why you would do that as a footballer. Why you would want to be remembered for something like that. The other classic example is the Brazilian footballer Rivaldo. Won the Ballon d'Or, did brilliant for clubs like Barcelona. Did obviously brilliant for Brazil, winning the World Cup and stuff like that. And then what's he remembered for? The dive at the corner flag.
I mean, that was an early case and so obvious and so awful. I feel like nowadays it's so prevalent you're used to it, really. It's
and that's the problem. Do we want to talk about any of the other fixtures at all?
Well, have we actually talked
any of
about
the other
Arsenal Man
results,
City?
rather?
I had some interesting thoughts on the Arsenal game, but yeah, we kind of branched out, I guess. Because I was going to say, as I sent you some links earlier about the tactical setup, I found it really fascinating because I like to try and understand why a game is going the way it is, but I'm very new to it, so still, there's loads of useful stuff online, especially on Twitter, which illustrate why certain games go the way they do. So with the Arsenal game, I read a few things which showed that Arsenal essentially contained City and pushed them back, kind of further up the pitch. So they contained City in the midfield and forced City to try and find other ways of moving the ball around. De Bruyne would come out from midfield out wide to the left, but then he couldn't find space. Arsenal's midfield, they were set up really well, really effectively, and it's why they were able to basically man-mark City in the key areas and dominate for so long. As Pep said after the game, Arsenal were the better team. City were certainly very lucky to get away with their win. And it's partly down to luck and lack of concentration. Gabriel, for example, or Gabriel, however you pronounce it, he didn't need to scuff the penalty spot. That was unnecessary.
No.
Xhaka has made a mistake, albeit a mild one. Get on with the game. And then moments later, he makes a foul in the middle of the pitch, and all of a sudden it's 1-1, still fairly even, and then down to a disadvantage by moments of stupidity, which you can't afford against Man City.
No, and it's annoying because he's been one of our most consistent. He's been part of the core duo at the back. He's had defensive partners and worked. He's been the one consistent performer most of the time, and generally thought of as quite calm. Like he's been a leader. People think of him as having potential captain qualities, and there's a lot of disappointment about the way he sort of allowed himself to be overcome by the situation, by the importance of the match and stuff. But he is only, I think he's just 23, maybe just 23, 24, so he's got time.
Yeah, I do forget that how many players in Arsenal's first 11 are actually younger than you think. The average age is quite low, I think.
Yeah, it's only, what is it, Partey, Xhaka, from what I can see from the lineup of the last game, Partey, Xhaka and Lacazette are the only ones above 25.
That's a young team. I mean, it's good for the future, but that's if you have a young team with little experience, then I suppose ill discipline can kind of creep in. But still, it's disappointing. Yeah. It's good to see Arsenal do so well, and then you see Arsenal in fourth, and you think, the old days.
So, before we move on from the Arsenal game, where do we think Arsenal are finishing this season?
Possibly
top
fourth.
4, top 6, or below that?
Oh, I don't know. I don't like making predictions, but I want to say top 6. Top 6, definitely very, very possible. Top 4 is on the less likely end, but top 6 should be expected, I think.
I agree there. I think they've definitely exceeded my expectations, which is bringing me on to a similar point, really. Which team, alongside your Arsenal prediction, which team would you say has surprised you so far this season in the Premier League, at least? West Ham are still doing well. They did well last season. Tottenham, you expect them to have a rebound under Conte, but I'd say Arsenal for me.
Yeah, it's I think you could highlight it. You could really get a good idea of the wave of change in the consensus just by looking at what people have to say about Arteta now compared to how they treated him and how they spoke about him, especially in the summer.
3 games into the season.
3 games. What was it? Brentford, Man City, and Chelsea. So Brentford and then the European and domestic champions. And sort of very, very quickly written off. Summer signings, laughed at roundly, just sort of. But that's going to happen. That's going to happen. It happens with Solskjaer. I think there are some teams that are generally targeted by a greater amount.
Yeah, it's just the expectation level, more or less.
Yeah.
It's interesting looking at Arsenal because they don't have a lot of draws. They're a very all or nothing team. So they've only got 2 draws so far this season, 7 losses, which is it's quite a lot of losses. That's more losses than Man United. Yet they're much higher because they've won a lot more. Right?
I like your all or nothing pun because they've got that documentary being filmed at the moment, haven't they?
That,
It's going to be very interesting to see the fallout of Aubameyang's behaviour if that is caught on camera. I think that's another matter entirely, and we can go down that rabbit hole possibly another time. I think I cut you off, James, earlier. Do you think Arsenal will be top 6?
I didn't actually make a prediction. I conveniently stepped out of that one.
Step in.
Because I think I was probably one of the ones that put 8th in the initial prediction, and then was sort of rethinking that after I saw the start to the season. But then, like as the season's progressed, honestly, I think at least top 6. That's almost for certain. So I'm thinking like either 4th or 5th. I think I imagine it will come down to quite a tense battle for the 4th place spot, potentially between Arsenal, West Ham, and probably Spurs. Honestly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Man United aren't really too far off that either, are
True,
they?
but I really don't know what to expect with Man U anymore.
No, that's the problem.
I guess I just
depends.
expect. I kind of know a little bit more of what to expect with Arsenal, West Ham, and Spurs, but with Man U, I mean, I don't know. I really don't. Yeah.
Three of those
it's going to be a
four
constant
teams.
theme, just us constantly debating about what to expect with Man U.
I don't think West Ham will make it into the top 4 spot because they do have a smaller squad than other teams, and I think they will see a drop off at some point.
Outside of the starting 11, just not a lot of squad depth.
Yeah.
A brilliant starting 11, but,
I also do not think Arsenal will make it into the top 4, just based on how well we expect, or I expect, Tottenham to do under Conte. I think Tottenham have a better chance of getting into the top 4 than Arsenal. I mean, at the minute they've got 2 games in hand and they're 2 points off, right? They're potentially, I mean, it's ifs, buts, and maybes, but they're potentially 4 points ahead, which is not insignificant. Man United, I don't know what they're gonna do under Ragnick.
It's a bit hard to look objectively without, the anti.
Yeah. So
it obviously depends a bit on the January transfer window, of course.
Definitely. I mean, Newcastle are already starting with Kieran Trippier, who looks like he's going to be joining fairly soon. Apparently, he's going to be one of 4 big transfers Newcastle want to make, which makes sense.
6,
I think we talked. Well, I heard 4, but we definitely touched upon this in the previous episode, where if you make too many changes all at once, then it may not work because you need to embed them in the team as soon as possible. But who knows? Newcastle may pull it off.
So Tottenham beat Watford 1-0. I don't think that it's particularly unexpected that Tottenham won that game.
Oh, that was jammy. That was so jammy.
They clinched it in injury time.
By any means, and momentum's key when you want to get a top 4 space. I know it's early, very early, because you need momentum maybe a month or 2 later than now, but the wins count, all the wins count, and they have, as you said, got games in hand.
Well, I think Watford approached that game with the intention of don't lose it rather than win it, right?
Definitely.
Just get some points off a top side, and it really helps in that relegation battle. So I think they because they set up very defensively. They barely touched the ball, especially in the first half, other than to bloody rebound it.
Basically, just don't concede in the first half. That seemed to be their aim, and then see how long they could last in the second half. And they did really well.
It very nearly paid off. So I think that, the stats from that would show that Tottenham should have won it by a lot more than they did. But I think the story really is Watford defended incredibly well.
Yeah.
Do you think that is I was going to say oxymoron, but praising Watford for not going all out attacking after earlier complaining about?
I suppose is it a balance between pragmatism and principle, really? If you have the money, you can afford to play attacking, interesting football because you're ambitious. You've got the money, you've got the resources. You're a bigger club. You're going for trophies or European positions. But when you're trying to survive in the Premier League and you don't have the tools at your disposal to play that kind of football, you need to be pragmatic. You need to be able to get clean sheets. You need to be able to shut up shop at the back before thinking of playing any kind of attractive philosophical football that might be easy on the eye, because you need the points, and fundamentally it's about money. Surviving in the Premier League is about money.
But it's also about entertainment. It's hard to reconcile.
It's why Burnley, they're getting money because they survive, but no one really wants to watch them. It's why Palace, surviving for this long, have done well, but they were always at the end of match of the day schedules, partly because they didn't play very attractive football. But now, under Vieira, more often than not, they're earlier on the card, as it were.
I remember once, actually, we had a game against Fulham. I think it might have been last season. and it was being aired on the BBC, and they seemed to be quite proud of the fact that they had finally gotten, I think, a 3:00 fixture on Saturday on the BBC, and it was Crystal Palace versus Fulham. And I remember when it went to half time, they went to the pundits, and the first comment was, "Wow," because the first half was that desperate.
I mean, two things can be true. Like, Watford went into that game with a game plan to defend, and they did that really well. That doesn't mean I enjoy watching it, and I certainly wouldn't want Leeds to play like that.
No.
I would. I mean, the closest Leeds got to that is when we were playing 10 men against Man City last year, and it worked. To be fair, we won. We did nothing. We sat back and just played on the counter, and it worked. But it's way less entertaining. It's certainly it's very nerve-wracking watching your team getting pelted with balls non-stop.
And you pay money to watch them, so you want some entertainment value. But there's a balance, isn't there, I suppose? You want to be entertained, but you also want them to be in the Premier League, because that's where the most excitement happens, really. You want to be in the big league. You want your club to do well.
Yeah.
But then again, would you rather play exciting football but get relegated, or play, like Blackpool, for example, about 10 years ago, or play boring football but stay up?
I'd rather play exciting football and stay up.
I mean, unfortunately, it's based on the resources at your disposal, because the style of football that we played last season under Hodgson, and indeed for most of the time when we were managed by Roy Hodgson, was because he's a real pragmatist. He was a real pragmatist, and so he just used the resources at his disposal, and he knew that the players that we had at that point, they were mostly good at playing that sort of defensive style of football. But obviously we had a bit of a clear out in the summer, and we bought a couple of younger, more dynamic attacking players, and now we brought in Patrick Vieira, who has employed a more attacking style of football, and it's worked because based on the resources we have at our disposal, and that's ultimately what it comes down to. So, like with Burnley, for instance, the sort of players they have, that's the style of football they play. It may not be good on the eye, but it's what they know, and they can do it pretty effectively. And for that reason, they probably will stay up again.
Well, the thing is, they flirted with the relegation zone for years. It works until it doesn't work. I mean, you look at last year, Leeds. They 100% attacked the Premier League, and they did really well. The year before, Sheffield. This year, Brentford.
Huddersfield had a similar impact. More and more teams are coming up, being dynamic, sticking to how they play. Bournemouth too, but then time catches up if you keep playing that style.
If you keep playing that style without evolving.
Yeah, if you don't develop it. And Bournemouth didn't really. Bournemouth are always open at the back, which is partly why I'm not convinced that Eddie Howe is guaranteed to be a success at Newcastle. He's a good manager, but his teams have always been open at the back to a degree.
Well, so are Leeds, and Leeds are suffering from it. But a part of that is the lack of a steady back line as well. So there's factors out of your control, but at the same time, just sitting back, it doesn't guarantee you will stay up, and attacking doesn't guarantee you will go down. And at the end of the day, if you have 2 seasons of really good attacking football in the Premier League that's really entertaining, and then a third one where it doesn't work, you go down. But you've stuck to your principles, you've played an entertaining game. Is that not better than just sitting back doing nothing? And eventually people will just be like, well, I'm just going to look at the results on Flash Score instead of watch the game because I can't bother watching it.
Yeah, it's quite subjective, I think. Some fans will like that. Some fans will prefer to play what might be called Brexit football. Just snatch some results and just get the points by any means necessary and stay up. It really varies.
Proper English football, simple as.
Maybe. I would be interested to see like a proper breakdown of whether people prefer watching like free-flowing attacking football or sit behind the ball and just don't concede football.
Speaking of free-flowing attacking football, how about that Chelsea-Liverpool game?
Yes, good segue. That was a good game. As soon as I thought I was watching the game and trying to watch a fan channel at the same time just to see what their opinions were, but they were just shouting, so it wasn't as many fan channels do. They just ended up shouting at each other. So
how have we inevitably had a top 6 bias with the results now? I just segued on to Chelsea Liverpool. There are other games we could have talked about, like Brighton Everton, but never mind.
I mean, we could do next. To be fair, we could do next.
Talk about Chelsea Liverpool. That was way more interesting. Way more interesting than Palace West Ham, that's for sure.
Well, Palace West Ham, I was at that match, and it was, as I said in our Instagram post, please go check it out. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. It was basically a case whereby One team took their chances, the other team didn't, until very late, by which point it was a bit late.
But alas, Chelsea-Liverpool.
So yes, Chelsea-Liverpool. Even though Liverpool went 2-0 up, it was a very even game throughout, and Chelsea edged in midfield. Kovacic and Kante played really well. Liverpool didn't have a lot of possession, as much possession as they usually do, and they didn't really manage to get the ball into the final third as often as they usually do. Pep Blinders said that afterwards. They were displeased at the limited ability they had to maintain possession further up the field in Chelsea's half. So it was a fairly even match. Both keepers made great saves. I think Kelleher, who hasn't played a lot this season because he's basically an understudy, he's demonstrated his talent. He's an up-and-coming goalkeeper, very exciting talent. And I think it was ideal for Man City, great for the neutral, not good for either club, but yeah, it was a very engaging game. I think a draw was probably the best result. Tactically fascinating battle. You saw at the end of the match, all the players, especially the Chelsea players, were on their feet. They were exhausted because it was such a high-octane fight of a game. One of the best matches of the season. Two quality teams just going at it, which as a result meant that they were quite open. Kovacic's goal, a bit lucky, but it was a quality goal. And then the first goal, Mane scoring not long after getting just a yellow. You could argue it could have been a red, although looking back, his elbow, it wasn't a clear whack to the head. He was kind of moving. The arm was kind of in line with his overall body shape as he was going for the ball. But anyway, he scored a goal after a Chalobah error. So overall, my synopsis is that it was a draw was a deserved result. But Liverpool will rue the fact that they were 2-0 up and couldn't maintain, keep the lead. That's something that's happened a few times this season. They get a lead, but they can't control the game. Game management seems to be an issue Liverpool have this season. It's manifested in defensive fragility.
What's changed? Like, I don't know. You follow them more closely than
I'd say this season, Van Dijk isn't at his best yet. The midfield is okay, but doesn't have the creativity and nous that City's midfield does. So creativity normally comes at the front. But yeah, I'd say game management. Maybe it's a psychological issue. They haven't got it back yet. But Liverpool, at times, are as good as they've ever been under Klopp. But often they've taken a lead, but they just can't protect it. You've got Brentford, for example, this game, a couple of other games as well. I think Brighton at home a few months ago. Maybe it's psychological. They just can't always control a match in the way they used to. Maybe it's a personnel issue. Maybe it's psychological.
You said about creativity. Is that not still coming more from Trent and Robertson?
To an extent, it is still coming from Trent and Robertson. You can look at Trent's stats, and again, he is up he has as many assists as almost any other player. Salah on fire again is helping them make up for that lack of creativity in the midfield. So I'm being quite pedantic here. Jota again, he's a great signing. Firmino and Mane have also scored quite a few goals. So Liverpool were perversely not as creative as they've been back in 2019-20
Goals
when they won the league.
There,
oh, goals were there, but the fact is they won the league because
definitely
there. But they won the league back then because they could control games. They didn't score loads, fewer than the season before, fewer than the season after, and so on. But they controlled games. And they haven't done that since.
Are you missing Wijnaldum?
Wijnaldum, possibly. He added to a different dimension in midfield, and he is missed a bit, but I think it's partly because Virgil's been out for a while. Virgil's not at his best yet. When he's alongside Matip, Liverpool fans often talk about when Virgil is in defence, anyone who's next to him is immediately a world-class. And I agree to an extent, but I also think that Joel Matip, and many Liverpool fans will agree, most, in fact, all probably, Joel Matip has been overlooked. He's better than people think he is. He cost practically nothing. I can't remember off the top of my head if it was a free transfer or not, but basically nothing. And he is a class centre-back. The way it's Hansen-esque in how he can take the ball from defence and just dribble through the middle of the pitch and start an attack. You saw that against Leeds at Ellen Road. I think it was the first goal. He dribbled through and set up a chance that eventually Salah converted. So I think overall Liverpool's issue this season has been game management, but at times they are as good as they've been. But sometimes when it matters, because in 2019-20, as champions need to do, they'd win even if they were playing poorly. Nowadays, if they play poorly, they'll draw or lose because they don't have that psychological determination just to keep going, to see out the game. Maybe it's tactical smarts, or it's not. I'm not sure really, but there's something missing. So they can't win the title now. It's a bit too late. Neither can Chelsea. because Chelsea almost had 5 home draws in a row and had that dreadful run of form. Chelsea, that's another matter. Yeah, they really missed Chilwell. But yeah, I think for Liverpool's case at least, it should be focus on the cups now, and just try and ideally finish second and try and get back, try and give City something to think about. But I doubt it. Tactically, Liverpool are as good as they've been, and yeah, with Salah, Salah's he's having quite a season. His City goal alone was chef's kiss.
Still technically possible to win the league.
Technically,
but
it is
unlikely unless Man City
City don't blow a lead.
capitulate.
That's the thing. If you look
Yeah.
at City under Guardiola, they don't blow a lead, especially a 10-point or 11-point. So
Not so far.
Yeah,
but, I
not so
mean,
far.
first time for everything, but probably not this year. But I guess with that game, it's going to be. I know. Was it Azpilicueta who was the one elbowed by Mane, and Tuchel was very unhappy that it wasn't a red card. I don't think it should have been a red card. I mean, I have no stake in that game whatsoever, really. Yeah, I don't think it should have been a red card. Not just because it was only 6 seconds in, but because it didn't look intentional. And he jumped for the ball. And when you jump, your arms are going to be high.
Yeah.
It's not like he physically elbowed him. It was a jump. And when you're jumping, you have a right to try and get the ball.
it's natural body shape, and that brings into question why so many handballs are given in the penalty area nowadays. But it's that matter alone, and that's another rabbit hole we can go down. It's more binary now to help referees. Handball, regardless of deliberate or not, they give it nowadays. But yeah, Mane's aggression, I think, undermines him sometimes because he's known to be a very aggressive, adrenaline-pumped player. So when you see that, you think, oh, he's gone for it. But no, he's just passionately wants to win the 50-50. And as you said, Sam, he isn't deliberately elbowing Azpilicueta. He's moving his arm up to try and win the ball.
Yeah.
And it just hits Azpilicueta. And, of course, high-tempo match, 6 seconds in, boom, let's get a card. And, yeah.
Could have been a completely different game had it been a red card. Yeah. So, great game.
Yeah.
Chelsea-Liverpool, there's not much more to say about it, really, is it? Worst result for both teams, I guess.
Definitely the worst, yeah.
A draw.
But both teams
What's the
deserved,
table look like? Which one's ahead now? Are they on the same points? So
Chelsea
are ahead
have
by 1 point.
City played 21, 53 points. Chelsea played 21, 43. Liverpool played 20, 42.
So Liverpool potentially have 45 points. Potentially. Then that game in hand is against Leeds, which I think I think Liverpool would be expected to win that at Anfield.
I won't jinx
especially.
Regardless,
but no Salah. But yeah,
regardless, I believe the Premier League is beginning to look a little more akin to Ligue 1, dangerously akin.
It does. It does feel like it's becoming a one-horse race.
A hegemonic team backed by a sovereign wealth fund that is firmly dominating things domestically and not really doing much in the Champions League. It sounds quite similar.
Cool. So we've talked a lot about the games that affect the top of the table: Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City.
we could talk about Everton, Brighton, or something like that.
Everton, Brighton. Everton aren't doing particularly well, are they? They've played, I think, 18 games. They have 19 points, just over a point per game.
That's a relegation.
But Calvert-Lewin has returned. He missed a penalty, I believe.
He did miss a penalty. It was a bad miss.
So that is good news for Everton.
Just to temper expectations. That was to ease the pressure on him.
Yeah. I think Everton are far from getting relegated. I mean,
point is, yeah, there are not so good teams. Well, there are worse teams than Everton.
Yeah, they'll survive by being okay, which is what many teams do.
Yeah. Well, they're not even middle at the minute.
It's 15th.
They have the experience and the quality to be fine. It's just, yeah, not much has gone their way so far.
I mean, yeah, and meanwhile they face Brighton, who this season have been, well, okay, they started really well. They're still doing well, and they had a bit of a blip in the middle there, right? Yeah, so Brighton have only lost 4 games all season, which is
lower than everyone but the top 3.
It is lower than everyone but the top 3. They are, What was it you called Palace, James? You called them Draw FC. Well, Brighton have drawn more games.
Oh yeah.
Well, Brighton's style of play is more. It's more exciting. So while, well, yeah, I don't really mind. I'd rather teams that play interesting football do well than struggle when boring teams like some teams in the league profit. I mean, I'm not saying I want Burnley or Brighton, like those kinds of teams, to do well, partly because they have a history of beating Palace and just being annoying in general. But Brighton's system does interest me, the tactical system, and it works sometimes against big teams. Against Liverpool, for example, they basically employed a system whereby they made sure they outnumbered Liverpool at the back, so at Brighton's defence, and then they'd just build up play from there. It's very interesting to watch them play. I guess the football purist in me enjoys that kind of football. On the other hand, if they were relegated, I'd be happy, I suppose. I'd smile.
It's interesting because the whole table is wide open for everything below. I mean, it's so. Seventh is Man United. They have 31 points. Below them is Wolves with 28. Down in 16th are Leeds with 19. So there's only 9 points difference between 16th and 8th, which none of those teams in that range are Man City. They will all drop points. So the table really could go absolutely any way in that regard.
And that's where the interest probably lies now. The title race is done. Top four, still some interest, but
a lot of interest in who will get that fourth spot. Because there is several teams, at least 4 teams really, that could, in theory, get that fourth spot, depending on how they go. 3 maybe, if we discount Man United. I think they will sort of come into it as the season goes on. I think that's what they do, and I will forever hate them for it.
It's ominous. It's ominous looking at the form, specifically the form column. The 5 City wins on the trot, and their closest competitors do not have anywhere near as much consistency in recent form. There's no one looking to challenge at all, really.
Also, City have had some luck. No COVID outbreak alongside their squad strength. You haven't heard of any COVID issue with City, have you? Only Foden and Grealish going clubbing.
Yeah.
And even then they didn't get COVID.
Yeah, so it's wide open. And thankfully, so Leeds played Burnley, which was an important game for Leeds at the weekend. And they won 3-1, which puts an 8 points difference now between Leeds and the bottom 3. And it leaves really, so Watford are now 6 points off of Leeds and they're the one below, whereas Watford are only 2 points above Burnley. So it makes it very tight. So we've got a very tight top 4, as in who's going to get into that fourth spot, and we've got a very tight relegation 4 on who's going to escape that relegation zone.
Lots to play for.
Yeah, a Norwich win, and a Norwich win puts them level on points with Watford at this point. Now, some teams like Burnley have 2 games in hand over Newcastle and Norwich, and 1 game in hand over Watford. Watford have 1 game in hand over Newcastle and Norwich, so it's a bit up and down. But there was a lot of.
So just looking at Norwich, I thought they were definitely looked very adrift at one point. They looked very adrift. Now they're right in the mix, but somehow they have 5 losses on the trot. So I'm not. Yeah, quite
this is the thing. Watford also have 5. In fact, Watford have more than 5 losses on the trot. Because last week I said Watford have 5 losses on the trot, and they just lost again.
They're just they're plateauing together. They're just
this is the thing. None of those teams seem to be picking up points. So there was a lot of positivity in the Leeds game. I know it was against Burnley, but Burnley are. We've talked about managing gameplay. Burnley have recently been really good at that.
They are a solid outfit,
yeah. And for Leeds to go in and score 3 goals, and crucially, none of those goals were scored by Rafinha. So we've been heavily relying on Rafinha this season to score goals and win games. And one of the strengths of Leeds last season was, well, first we had Bamford, who scored a lot, But we also had goals coming in from all over. We had Harrison scoring, Dallas scoring, Click scoring. This season, there's not been that distribution. And in this game, we had 3 different goal scorers. So we had James get a header. And this is James, who's tiny. Dan James getting a header against the Burnley defence, who tower over him, which was interesting. Dallas getting a goal and Harrison getting his first goal of the season. So you got goals coming from more than one place, and for the first time we went ahead by more than one goal in a game this season. So it's positive in that regard.
Would you say Burnley offered anything? I was watching that match as well, flicking between that and I think one other, but I didn't see Burnley offer much at all.
They had a couple of chances. I think Meslier made a brilliant save when Charlie Taylor crossed into Chris Wood, and I mean Chris Wood was very close to Meslier, but it's one of them where you really expect the striker to score, and Meslier somehow managed to save it, which was brilliant. But other than that, there were times when Burnley looked dangerous,
like when Cornet came on. I assume.
When Cornet came on, yeah. But the thing is, Leeds should have killed the game in the first half. They had a lot more chances. In the second half, it started off a lot more shaky from a Leeds perspective, and it played a lot better for Burnley. They got a free kick. Cornet scored the free kick. It was a great free kick. Possibly Meslier could have saved it on another day, but it was a brilliant free kick. I don't really think Meslier is to blame for letting that one go in.
Fair enough.
It's put Leeds 8 points clear. It's kept Burnley in that relegation zone, and now it looks like a race between 4 teams.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Flies on the Ball. We will see you next week for our view on the FA Cup round.